This will be a tale based on a real-life true story of ambition, greed, and ultimately comeuppance. In his day, Klaew Thanikul would become the most powerful promoter in Thailand, putting on many of the golden era's biggest fights. The tale begins with Klaew Thanikul, born on April 10, 1934, into a Thai-Chinese family. After his twin sadly died a few days after his birth, his parents gave him the name Klaew, which literally means escaping danger. They probably had no idea at the time just how apt this would be. Klaew was lucky enough to have an above-average education by the standards of the time, after which he moved to Bangkok in the 40s to seek his fortune. He would work in real estate through the 50s, doing deals connecting buyers to sellers. As an ambitious man, Klaew was not content taking a small cut from larger business deals. He would expand his business into the provinces in the 60s and 70s, where things were still lightly policed in comparison to Bangkok. Here, his early business activities would include illegal logging and smuggling immigrants into Thailand. He would soon expand his business to include illegal gambling, drug dealing, arms dealing, and prostitution. By the 1970s, Thanikul had amassed a large degree of wealth that was not easily explained. Looking for a front to launder his illegal earnings, he would open up a casino. He would go on to open up Klaew Thanikul Gym in 1977, appointing Ajahn Peng as the chief instructor. The year of 1977 would also see the first documented attempt on his life. Thanikul's hard muscle would have no problem taking care of the assailant. Through the late 1970s and 1980s, Thanikul would host Thai boxing events, try to build up his gym, and struggle for power with rival promoters. Thanikul would face another attempt on his life in 1982 in an event at the Lumpini Stadium. An assassin would launch a grenade at Thanikul, who would scurry to safety in the nick of time. Thanikul's bodyguards would return fire at the grenade thrower, killing 5 people and injuring 50 more. Shortly after, Thanikul would arrange a hit of his own. Pretentious of machismo aside, ever the snake Thanikul, seen here in the striped shirt, would have no problems greeting and shaking their hands with the leadership of Haphalang Gym. Nevertheless, the die was already cast. In between the 3rd and 4th rounds of the Comeuppance v Lang Swan match, an assassin would brazenly shoot dead New Haphalang.
น้อยภาพนี้มาแล้วนี่ดีเซนน้อยปังแรกปังที่2ดีเซนน้อยหัน
One result of Thanikul's hostile takeover of Haphalang Gym is that he signed legendary Muay Thai fighter Diesel Noi, who would fight under the Klaew Thanikul banner for the rest of his career. On Christmas Eve 1982, Thanikul would host one of the biggest Thai boxing events ever. The event would pit multiple-time stadium champions Diesel Noi and Samart Pakarun against each other. For the first round and a half of the bout, Samart would use his movement to stay away from Diesel Noi, landing teeps and right hands. However, against Diesel Noi at the time, the saying "you can run but you can't hide" likely applies. Towards the end of the second round and through the 3rd round, Diesel Noi started to score more points. Between the 3rd and the 4th round, Diesel Noi's handlers threatened to have him shot. It could sound like banter or a figure of speech in modern times, but at the time, Diesel Noi said he took it literally. Through the 4th and 5th rounds, Samart looked gassed and ready to go down. By the end of the fight, Diesel Noi was a clear winner on points. In 1985, growing further in power, Thanikul was elected president of the Association of Amateur Boxing, as well as being universally recognised as a top Thai boxing promoter in Thailand. In 1986, Thanikul would make 2 promising new signings for his gym. Boon Lai and his brother Boon Lang had been training at Sorplonchit Gym, but the owner had racked up a gambling debt with Thanikul. In order to pay back his gambling debt to Thanikul, the owner would sell his rights to the 2 fighters. Training under Ajahn Peng from the age of 16, Boon Lai would flourish into one of the best fighters of his era, and arguably, all things considered, the best product of the gym. Boon Lang would go on to become a champion in his own rights, though he would tragically die in a car accident. Boon Lai fought as a Muay female stylist for much of his career, with an unorthodox style relying more heavily on punches than one would expect for a female stylist of the time. He had a style that, with its emphasis on punches, would be impressive to many modern fans of MMA. Avoiding the clinch, he was also a good kicker and holds a win over Sumrak Kamsing amongst other big names from the era. In February 1988, Thanikul would arrange another hit. A rival promoter with ties to illegal gambling and fight fixing would be murdered at the Lumpini Stadium. The brazen nature of the killing would attract international media, being featured in the LA Times amongst other media outlets. When questioned about the killing, Thanikul appeared as an arrogant thug, telling reporters that he didn't arrange the hit, but it would have been easy for him to do so. In 1988, Thanikul would go on a foreign expedition to promote his gym, arranging a match between Chang Puk, one of the fighters he was promoting, and the American kickboxer Rick Rufus. 2 minutes into the first round, disaster would strike for Thanikul's camp. Rufus would execute a Superman punch left-hand combo that would floor Chang Puk. He would follow up with a combo later in the round, breaking the jaw of the Thai and dropping him. Chang Puk's corner worked on furiously trying to revive him between rounds. Under normal circumstances, with a broken jaw and 4 rounds to go, it might be time to throw in the towel, but Chang Puk was fighting for national pride under the watch of Thanikul's crew. In the second round, Chang Puk started landing big leg kicks. Though he did take a spinning back fist, he would drop Rufus with a big leg kick later in the round. Chang Puk would have his way for most of the rest of the fight, eventually finishing Rufus in the 5th round. In January 1990, Thanikul would send another of his fighters abroad, sending Sombat to fight Ronnie Green in the UK. In the first round, though Sombat would land a teep exposing an off-balance Green, he would also get countered multiple times and concede a number of leg kicks. In the second round, Green would land a big leg kick that would send Sombat stumbling. He would again land a leg kick, flooring an off-balance Sombat at the end of the round. In the third round, things would become a wild affair, with Sombat seemingly unhappy with how things were going at distance, doggedly pursuing the clinch. Towards the end of the round, Green would catch Sombat with punches as he attempted to rush into the clinch. Green started the 4th round by landing punches as he pressed the action. Sombat would have more success timing his teep. In the 5th round, both fighters' pace was slow, though Green would land more in many people's estimation. When the decision was announced, the fight was unexpectedly declared a draw. It is unlikely Klaew Thanikul held much sway with the judges in the UK, 2 of whom were British. Perhaps some of the mystique of the Thai was a factor in the decision. Outside of the ring in the 1990s, Thanikul was under increased pressure from a new government who had added him to a list of people with suspicious wealth and who were clamping down on organised crime. Thanikul got his comeuppance on April 5, 1991. In an ambush, Thanikul's vehicle was hit with a grenade launcher. Trying to escape to safety, he was pumped full of 50 bullets. To some, Thanikul will be remembered as a promoter who made big fights happen, but to many others it was really the fighters who made these fights. To those, Thanikul will likely be remembered as a sordid figure who desecrated the great Lumpini Stadium with murder and double dealing.